There is a clay tablet locked away in the British Museum that scholars insist is nothing more than ancient medicine.
Sumerian tablets are probably one of the oldest form of written record that we have.
And that thousands of people alive right now believe is something else entirely. It is almost 3,000 years old.
These messages from ancient times to try to get us to appreciate who we really are, where we really came from, and why we're really here.
It was pulled from the buried library of a dead empire, and what it describes is not a god and not a monster, but something with no face and no shadow that moves through crowded cities, slips through bolted doors, and stands beside ordinary people without ever being seen. So, was the scribe who carved it imagining things, or reporting them? Buried library. To understand what was sitting on that desk, you need to rewind about 50 years to a hill in northern Iraq called Kuyunjik. Under that hill lay the ruins of Nineveh, capital of the Assyrian Empire, a city so feared that when it fell in 612 BC, the ancient world talked about its destruction like the end of an age. British excavators started cutting into the mound in the 1840s and 1850s, and what they pulled out of the collapsed palaces rewrote everything. They found a library. Not a poetic library. A real one, assembled by Ashurbanipal, one of the last great kings of Assyria, a king who could actually read and write in an age when most kings could not, and who sent agents across Mesopotamia to collect every text that mattered and copy it for his palace. When the city burned, the fire that killed everything else baked the clay hard and sealed it under the rubble. Tens of thousands of tablets and fragments came out of that mound and were shipped to the British Museum, so many that scholars are still joining pieces today. Now, pay attention to this part. Most of that library is exactly what you would expect. Tax records, letters, omens, royal bragging. But mixed into the crates was a series of tablets from a much older and much darker tradition, a series scribes had been copying for well over 1,000 years before Ashurbanipal was born, with roots running back through Babylon into ancient Sumer, the civilization that invented writing itself. The series had a name, and the name was not subtle. In Sumerian, Udug Hul. In Akkadian, Utuku Lemnutu. In English, the evil demons. And the moment you open it, you understand why a king kept it. The Evil Demons. The Evil Demons series runs 16 tablets, and it is written in 2 languages at once, line by line, ancient Sumerian on one line, its Akkadian translation on the next. By the time these copies were made, nobody on Earth spoke Sumerian anymore. It was a dead language kept alive by scholars, the way monks kept Latin. Think about what that means. The most literate people in the ancient world refused to let go of the original wording of this one series, even after the language itself had died. Whatever this was, they decided it had to survive. This is the series Thompson was staring at in 1903, and when he published it, he gave his translation a title that tells you exactly how it hit him: The Devils and Evil Spirits of Babylonia. And this is where it gets strange, because the beings in these tablets are not dragons. No fangs, no wings, no horns, no monstrous body at all. And that is the entire point. The Udug, the being at the center of the series, is defined by the fact that you cannot define it. The texts describe a being without recognizable form. It casts no shadow the way you do. You cannot see it coming, and it does not live out in the wilderness where monsters are supposed to live. It works inside the city, inside the streets, inside houses, which raises the obvious question: what does it actually do in there? Words on clay. Here is what the tablets claim, paraphrased from the translations but faithful to their content. These beings pass from house to house in the night. No door can shut them out. No bolt can turn them back. They glide through the pivot of the door the way a serpent glides. They drift through the gap of the hinge the way wind drifts. They roam the wide streets of the city. And when one of them chooses a person, it does not attack like an animal. The texts say the Udug stands beside its victim. It attaches itself to a man in the street. It walks with him. It follows him home. And it stays at his side, unseen, day after day, while his strength drains away, and no physician can say why. The scribes did not write any of this like a campfire tale. They wrote it flat and exact, the way you record something you expect to happen again. A civilization kept that on file in a dead language for 1,000 years. Now stop for a second, because this is where the whole story turns. And if this is the kind of history that keeps you up at night, this channel digs into cases like this every single week, tablets, ruins, translations, the strange edges of the ancient record. So, take 1 second, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and then stay with me, because the next section is the reason this series became famous. They are 7. Inside the evil demons tradition sits a passage that has been quoted and fought over ever since Thompson first put it into English, an incantation about a specific group of these beings. The tablets are obsessive about the number. They are 7, born in the mountains of the west, reared in the depths. 7, and the text hammers the count over and over like a drumbeat, as if the number itself were the warning. Then the tablets do something you do not expect. They stop describing what the 7 are, and they start listing, point by point, everything that separates them from you. They are neither male nor female. They take no wife, they father no children. They know nothing of mercy and nothing of pity. They do not hear prayer, they eat no bread, they drink no water, and offerings mean nothing to them. Every ordinary human incentive, the whole machinery of appetite, family, fear, and worship that runs every person who has ever lived, simply does not apply to them. They move through the human world, the texts say, but they are not part of it. They grind the land beneath them the way grain is ground. They are the fury behind the storm wind, and nothing built by human hands keeps them out of a home. Now look at what the scribes actually built here, whether they meant to or not. A checklist, a list of markers, a description of entities that occupy the same streets and houses as people and can be told apart from people only by absences, by the missing appetites, the missing reflexes of an ordinary human life. And they wrote it in a calm, procedural voice, copied it carefully for centuries, and stored it in temple libraries and royal archives like essential technical knowledge. Not poetry for a festival, not a monster tale to scare children. A reference document maintained across dynasties by professionals describing how to recognize what should not be there. That would be unsettling enough on its own. But one being in this series is worse than the 7, and it waits in the room where you sleep, unseen beside you. The Akkadian texts call it the Alu, and the descriptions that survive are broken, but the pieces are the stuff of nightmares. The Alu lacks the features a person has. Where a face should be, the texts give you nothing. And its signature move is not violence, it is covering. Picture the scene the tablets are pointing at. A man asleep on his mat in a dark room, the lamp burned out, the house bolted for the night. Nothing enters through the door, because it does not need the door. Something without a face settles over the sleeper the way a cloak covers a body, the way a net settles over prey, silent, total, and intimate, and the man does not wake. There is no struggle in the description, no screaming, no blood, none of the theater you expect from an ancient demon text. Just weight and darkness, and something patient that was already inside before the bolt ever slid shut. The texts say it waits in doorways. It waits in the dark corners of the house. It waits specifically in the bedroom. Now step back and notice what every one of these beings has in common. The Udug at your side in the street. The 7 moving through the city with no appetites to betray them. The Alu over your bed. The whole series is built on one idea, repeated in a dozen forms. The human world is shared. Something else occupies it with us. And that something is close, domestic, and undetectable by any normal means. 3,000 years before anyone had a phrase for it, Mesopotamian scribes were writing about hidden neighbors. So, who writes that down and keeps it for 1,000 years? To answer that, you have to stand at a bedside in the middle of the night. What scholars believe. Picture a sick room in a Mesopotamian city. A man is wasting away on his mat, and nobody can say why. Torchlight moves across the walls because a specialist has been called. A professional, the texts call the Ashipu, an exorcist physician. He scatters flour in careful circles around the bed. Small figurines are set out to draw the invisible thing into them. A censer smokes in one corner, a torch is carried from room to room, and over the patient, the Ashipu recites both halves of a scripted dialogue aloud, playing 2 gods at once. In the script, Marduk sees a suffering man and goes to his father, Ea, the god of wisdom and deep water, and describes the symptoms, and Ea answers with instructions, what to prepare, what to sprinkle, what to say, like a senior physician talking a resident through a case. Every word, every circle of flour, every figurine has one goal: make the invisible attacker let go. And if it worked, If the man recovered, the ritual was confirmed. If he died, the attacker had simply been too strong. Either way, the system held, and the tablet stayed essential. That scene is the scholarly answer to this entire series, and the evidence behind it is enormous. The Evil Demons tablets are medical literature. In a world with no germ theory and no microscopes, the invisible attacker was the diagnosis. The Udug standing unseen at a man's side was, functionally, the infection. The incantations were the treatment. And once you see that, a lot of the eeriness clicks into place. The texts sound like careful observation because they are careful observation of real symptoms, real declines, real deaths, pinned on agents nobody could see. The obsession with doors and bolts and hinges makes sense because sickness really did get into sealed homes, and nobody could explain how. Even the 1,000 years of copying makes sense. This was not a ghost story. It was a medical manual, and people do not let medical manuals die. For most Assyriologists, that is the end of it, and the scholars are almost certainly right. But almost is a heavy word to hang a mystery on, because starting in the 1970s, millions of people decided the scholars were reading the right words and reaching the wrong verdict. The other reading. This is where the phrase "some believe" stops being a figure of speech. In the 1970s, a writer named Zechariah Sitchin built an entire career on the claim that the Sumerian texts, read his way, describe a non-human species called the Anunnaki arriving on Earth and operating among mankind. Let me be completely straight with you about the record. Professional scholars have rejected his translations across the board. His readings have no academic acceptance anywhere, but his books sold in the millions, and they created a permanent audience primed to read every strange Mesopotamian text as a field report instead of a ritual. Late-night radio picked it up. Documentary television built entire seasons on it. Internet forums turned it into a permanent argument that is still running right now. And for that audience, the Evil Demon series is irresistible because they do not have to invent one single word. The tablets are genuinely ancient. They sit in one of the most famous museums on Earth. The published translations are checkable by anyone. And those authentic, verifiable texts really do describe formless beings occupying human cities, really do list the traits that separate them from people, and really do insist they are present, plural, and organized around a number. All the believers add is one question the academics consider illegitimate. What if the Ashapu was not imagining his diagnosis? You can dismiss the question. Most experts do. But the believers hold one piece of evidence that even skeptical readers admit is genuinely strange. Echoes everywhere. The idea at the heart of these tablets, the hidden being that shares human spaces and gives itself away only through small wrongnesses, did not stay in Mesopotamia, and it did not die with cuneiform. It shows up independently, almost everywhere humans tell stories. In the changeling traditions of the British Isles, a child is replaced by something that looks like the child but is not, and parents are told to watch for the subtle signs. In Scandinavian folklore, the Huldra passes as a beautiful, ordinary woman until you catch the one detail she hides, the hollow back she keeps turned away. In Japanese tradition, the Naparabo wears a familiar human face until the moment that face is revealed as a smooth, featureless blank. Shapeshifter and skinwearer traditions surface on every inhabited continent, and again they agree on the shape of the fear. The thing looks human. The thing lives among humans. The difference is small, specific, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. And here is the detail that gets under the skin. Many of these traditions do not stop at describing the intruder. They prescribe tests. The changeling lore is packed with procedures meant to startle the imposter into revealing itself. Tricks of surprise and absurdity built to provoke a reaction no true child would give. These are not bedtime stories. They are instructions, handed down by people who acted as if the instructions might one day be needed, which is exactly what the scribes of the Evil Demon series were doing 3,000 years earlier. Folklorists have a sober explanation for the pattern. Your survival has always depended on reading other humans, so your brain ships with a finely tuned alarm for faces and behavior that are almost right, but not quite. Roboticists rediscovered that reflex in the 20th century and named it the uncanny valley, the instant revulsion you feel towards something that closely imitates a person without fully succeeding. That is why a doll with the wrong eyes disturbs you more than any monster mask ever could. On this view, every culture tells almost human stories because every human brain carries the same detector. And the Sumerian tablets are simply the oldest surviving printout of an alarm we all carry. The believers, of course, read exactly the same evidence backwards. To them, a detector that universal implies something universal to detect. An agreement across cultures is not shared psychology, but shared memory. That reading has no academic support, and nothing on the clay can prove it. But nobody has fully explained the pattern away either, which leaves you holding the question the tablets have been asking for 3,000 years. The open question. Here is where all of it lands. The tablets exist. You can find them in the British Museum collections. The translations exist, more than a century of them, each new edition more careful and more complete than the last. The words on the clay really do describe beings without form moving through human cities, standing beside human beings, entering sealed human homes, distinguishable from us only by the human things they do not do. The scholars say those words are ancient medicine, a brilliant, haunted attempt to name the invisible causes of suffering. And the scholars are almost certainly right, and still the series will not let go, for the same reason it survived in the libraries. The scribes wrote it down as if it were true. They copied it in a dead language for 1,000 years, as if someone far in the future might need it. And the fear it records is one you already know. That moment sitting across from someone in a quiet room, when something, for no reason you could ever put into words, feels slightly wrong. The next time that feeling finds you, remember, you are not the first. 25 centuries before you were born, under a hill in northern Iraq, a scribe pressed that exact feeling into wet clay, filed it in a royal library, and left it for whoever came after. We are the ones who came after. So, now I want to hear from you. Do you read these tablets the way the scholars do, as the medical imagination of a brilliant ancient culture? Or do you think the scribes of Mesopotamia were recording something they genuinely believed was walking their streets? Drop your answer in the comments, because the responses to episodes like this are half the reason this channel exists. And if this is your first time here, this is what we do. The deep, strange, documented edges of the ancient world, one story at a time. So, subscribe, turn on notifications, and I will see you in the next one.